Hello, welcome to the Dr. Kirstin Show. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritsen, and today we are going to be talking about burnout. We're going to be talking about health. We're going to be talking about chronic stress, and some of the reasons why people struggle to find solutions and what can be in the gap, and specifically also addressing where I think the constant what I see at least as far as like people misconceptions when it comes to healing and mindset is that to me what it seems like is that everybody seems to think that it needs to be this positive, always healthy, always joyful. You're constantly focusing on the better things, the happier things, the more positive things. But what I think is what can happen though with that is that it can also install that you are not meant to actually face the hard things and to heal through the hard stuff. And then what ends up happening is it is just this continuous it's the problem in and of itself and just continuing to create more of a problem when we are ignoring what is causing the problem in the first place. So we're going to talk about all of that today. But before we do that, just really quickly, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I have a new, well, it's not new, but I am offering a new experience, which is the deep dive private coaching that I have, but in a group format. And I'm very, very excited about this because if you are someone who has felt like you've been doing everything right, but it still feels like something's not working, I'm going to show you exactly where and why that happens. And I'm going to show you that it is not about necessarily doing everything right. It is about doing the right things for you. This is something that if you have been struggling with burnout, if you have been struggling with chronic health symptoms, if you feel burned out, even in like the healing process, this is where we are going to turn everything on its head. And instead of looking for all of the solutions outside of you, we are actually going to help you find the solutions that are the right ones for you because they will be guided by you. So this isn't another like there are a bunch of tools, there are a bunch of mindset things in there. There are some like protocol type things, but they are instead of you needing to putting all of the emphasis on the tools and the protocols, this is actually putting the emphasis on your inner space, your inner world that is creating the external world. So again, it is not where we are going to be trying to fix you. We are instead going to be unwinding so many of the different beliefs and the reasons why we get burned out, why we have chronic symptoms, so that you can release that you don't have to necessarily get everything right and do everything perfectly to feel better. So we are going to also rewire some of the like survival patterns that make burnout your baseline, so that you can really heal on your own terms. And it really is not about having the perfect plan. It's about your real path back to capacity and clarity and peace. And I mean that I there was a book that I was reading a little while ago, and one of the sentences that I read was that what people really need to find is the ability to have it wasn't just inner peace, it was written as being able to have the inner world, that inner space as like a retreat. And that resonated so much with me because if you have been burned out, if you've been someone who has had anxiety or depression or had chronic symptoms or chronic illness, like one of the things that can happen, especially if pain and fatigue and those things are kind of some of the things that you experience, can feel really tough and really hard to feel like the inner world is a retreat. Autoimmune disease, same thing, right? Because self is attacking self. So that is one thing that can be very, very hard to feel. And especially when the body is essentially forcing you to say no and to stop. This is one of those things that can be very hard to access, but it is a part of the healing process that can unlock so many doors and opportunities as far as like healing and helping you feel better and really being able to find solutions for some of these things that sometimes feel like there aren't any solutions for. So pre-sale is on until May 12th, and then we are going to start on May 16th. Of 2025. So if you're catching this late, whatever, but we are going to be doing that. So if you are interested, just check out the show notes and you'll get all the information there. So let's go ahead and jump on in. All right. So today, what I wanted to talk about was essentially that when we are looking at things like chronic symptoms and stress, specifically, keeping in mind that the reason why so many people end up with serious illnesses and burnout, and just these mental and emotional and physical manifestations of disease is that number one, they manifest from stress and from suppressing emotions, which is really, really important because particularly when we're considering why we see so much stress and where people don't have the tools in order to work through that stress is because of either some kind of uncertainty, because of either they lack a certain amount of information, although I would say that now a lack of information is far less of a problem, which is why so many of the things that I have done have started shifting away from giving you more information and are more in giving you the tools to help you work through that uncertainty. And then the other thing, because you can Google most things, you can find books for most things now. We have so much information at our fingertips, but what we don't necessarily have is the containers and the coaches and the access to people who can really be great guides that can help you walk through these things. So working through uncertainty and also the loss of control. The thing is that I always find that is so interesting about losing control and feeling this loss of control is that what we tend to do is want to control for the external, right? So we try and pull things off of our schedule. We try to shift our schedule. I did this. So when I was burning out and having a whole lot of problems, I was like, okay, well, what if I raise my prices in my business and then I also I just will give myself more time. I'll work a few less hours and I will shift things around that way and just see how that goes. And what's interesting is that that still didn't fix the problem, right? So what that is a good example of is like trying to control for external things. This is what most people hear, right? Is that like, well, if you're burned out, if you are stressed, if you have all these things, then do less. Like get stuff off of your schedule, right? Do less, rest more. But that doesn't actually account for the reason why the problem is there in the first place, which is actually coming from the internal space, not the external space. It doesn't mean that you don't need to remove things from your schedule and do less and say no to things that you actually want to say no to, and that you don't need to be potentially getting support and help in the house or around or asking, people to help carpool kids and all of those things. It does not mean that. It means that, yes, all of those things may be important, but just accounting for all of those things doesn't necessarily mean that by the end of doing all of that, that you're still not going to feel burned out. Like you might, and you might also still have the chronic symptoms, fatigue, pain, autoimmune, all of those things, right? So this is where people start feeling like I'm doing what people are telling me to do, and I still don't have what I want. That when you feel that way, that is because there is something going on internally that is not being addressed and it's being ignored, which is why I also wanted to talk about here too that I think sometimes when people think about health, it's not just not just health in the physical sense, right? Of like a healthy body and balance and hormones are doing their thing well and all of that. What this also means is like in the mental and emotional health, well-being world as well, is that I think people think that with health, it's about being happy all the time and finding joy and always having these like positive thoughts and always being, in this space of like positivity and seeing things through a different it's just that like we're constantly trying to find like the positive. That's not to say that also that joy and gratitude and love and happiness and that all of those things, fulfillment, that those aren't important because they very much so are. But what I think sometimes people do is they use that as a way to say, oh, well, this is how I'm supposed to be. So then I'm going to ignore the things that I don't want to look at. And when you find yourself pushing stuff away and trying to ignore something, that is actually where you're just going to continue to have the same things pop up over and over and over again. I last week I put out a episode that was like what might be here for you to learn with this challenge that's coming up for you. And that's what I find is that people tend to repeat the same lessons over and over and over again until they finally learn the lesson. And you might do that through many different ways. But it's when you have that perspective shift, that breakthrough, that aha moment that it's like, oh, I get why this is here. When you have that moment, that is essentially your brain finally giving you, like you're finally making and connecting all the dots. Maybe you're starting to listen to whatever you want to call it, but maybe God's source or just what's going on in your mind. But you learned what you needed to learn. And then what people will notice is that those lessons and those patterns that were showing up in their life aren't showing up anymore. So again, when we are wanting to potentially ignore something or not look at something, I think sometimes one of the biggest areas where people actually heal, not sometimes, I see this in my practice all of the time, which is that when the healing can really actually come and really impact the immune system when people are actually feeling those negative emotions. When they are actually able to express the long suppressed anger, when they are able to feel the sadness and the hurt and the shame and the guilt and the fear, all of those all of those emotions that have been suppressed, when we actually feel them and allow them to process and move out of the body, that does so much for your immune system, for your health, for your body, for the neuroendocrine, immunological systems, like all of those. They are one system. They are not just all connected, but they are one system. And when you are able to actually feel those emotions and get them out of the body, we open up the it basically opens up doors for the body to be able to heal. So I mention this because I think it's very important when we're talking about the mind-body connection or mind-body unity, but we're essentially saying that we're connecting the dots between the nervous system, the immune system, your hormones, emotions, and that they all are connected, and that they all are impacted by stress and how your body is managing that stress. And the thing that I think people miss the most, I've said that a lot on this episode, but I think what people miss the most is that it's not just what's currently here that's stressful in your life right now. It's all of the things that your brain, your subconscious mind has basically carried like baggage from when you were a kid. And in many ways, the stress that you're feeling here currently is in part still from way back when you were a kid, that your mind is still creating. And so that's, I think, where we kind of need to pay attention when it comes to stress, when it comes to burnout, when it comes to chronic symptoms, because we're not just looking at this from the perspective of like this all needs to be joyful and hunky dory and happy um, and gratitude and love. Like all of those things are very important, but we also have to sometimes feel the things. So if you find yourself kind of trying to bury stuff down and ignore it, just know that like until you learn and heal and allow those things to release, those same problems will tend to come up over and over again. And I can say that because I see it all the time in my practice. But I also wanted to say that like yes, while looking at some of those things and feeling those emotions can be very hard and can be very painful because of where they came from, it also gives your body like a huge amount of energy and a huge amount of fuel to heal and repair and restore. So then what I also sometimes see is that people have been on this journey for a while. They've been on the healing journey for a while and they've been chipping away at a lot of these things. I can definitely relate to this of doing all of the physical things to try to heal the body. Maybe you've seen functional medicine practitioners or maybe multiple practitioners, and you're still kind of trying to figure out like why this is here and why this is happening. And maybe you've also done some of the mindset work. Maybe you've seen a therapist, maybe you've done some of those things. You're pretty aware of where maybe some of the patterns came from when you were a kid. Maybe you've also done a lot of like nervous system work of balancing the nervous system, getting yourself out of survival mode, doing the breath work and all of those things. And yet, still, sometimes people still feel burned out and still don't have the health results that they're looking for. And that is usually where I start saying, okay, that means that number one, there are still some patterns and some lessons and some beliefs and some things that still need to be worked on and addressed. But there also might be that we're also looking at something like, have we fully accepted where we're at currently? Because one of the things that if we want to move forward, we have to come to an acceptance or an understanding of what got us here and knowing it is a different I sometimes I feel like the English language doesn't have the right words for it because it is actually a feeling. You will know it when you feel it, but it is an acceptance and an understanding of why this is here and why this is here for you and what the purpose of it is. And it isn't just a conscious understanding of it. It is like a full body feeling of like this is what I was meant to learn here. And sometimes those come in pieces and they come in journeys because sometimes you're not ready for every single piece. Like I talk about this all the time, but like if you, let's say, even if we're like looking at different if you were to go and take a math class, right? And the teacher was going to say like, okay, on day one, here is literally everything that you're going to learn for the year. Best of luck. You would be so overwhelmed and you probably wouldn't learn anything because it's too much. If the teacher was to dump everything on you for the entire year on the first day, where the heck would you even start, right? That is where I think people get a little bit bogged down when it comes to health journeys and dealing with these things or not just health journeys, but like any sort of challenge, whether it's a relationship thing or financial, any sort of challenge that you are facing in your life currently that you wish was different. If God or the universe or just the journey in and of itself was to say, okay, here are all of the things that you're going to need to learn and like bet good luck, that would not, number one, you probably wouldn't learn the lessons. Number two, again, super overwhelming, somewhat defeats the purpose, right? And number three, you might just end up walking away from it because again, it's just too overwhelming. Sometimes we just aren't quite ready for those lessons that are coming. So this is where I think it's really important that even if you've done some of the work and you're kind of going like, okay, but like literally how much more work could there possibly be? It is understanding that this is a journey and it is piece by piece and step by step. And we are just walking the path. You have absolute full control about how fast you go through that. Because you can decide at any time to stop. You can say, okay, like I've had enough for a while. I'm just gonna sit back and like stay here for a bit. I tend to not attract people like that so much because I am somebody that really wants to get where I want to go as quickly as possible. However, it still is in its own timing. So that acceptance, that awareness, those pieces are very, very important when it comes to really understanding why this is here for you. And sometimes we don't even have all of those pieces at the time. We start seeing those pieces in hindsight, 2020. But it is important that in order for us to really move forward, there are a lot of emotions and truths that need to be recognized before we're going to be able to then move on to the next thing. It's kind of like a stair step where you're just like learning the thing and learning the thing and learning the thing, and it's one step literally at a time. I also think too, particularly with people that I tend to work with a lot, is that anger, the emotion of anger, is one that gets suppressed so much. And especially with autoimmune disease, this is really important because people who tend to have autoimmune diseases and just chronic illnesses tend to be very kind people who will try not to like set too many boundaries that rock the boat. They will tend to kind of just let people do what they need to do. People pleasers, perfectionists, people who are avoidant of conflict, people who, just don't want to rock the boat. And they're very, very, very kind, and selfless to a point that not that that trait is necessarily bad, but it is one of those things where, especially if they are selfless and it is taking away from their well-being, that imbalance can be very damaging. And on top of that, the inability to experience the like giving yourself permission to express anger is one of those physiological processes that needs to happen in order for healing to progress and move forward. Now, I always find it very interesting because anger has a tendency to sort of cover up sadness. So usually where we start is with unlocking anger, but where it tends to go is that it's actually covering up a really deep sadness. So the processing of those two can be immensely powerful for people who have ignored those feelings and those parts of themselves for so long. And please keep in mind that these are all survival tools, right? They are how you learned to manage those things in your life. Like I had a really big one just recently because I walked through this, just like you guys do. But the one thing that came through was that like I had learned that I needed to do everything right and be a certain way and, do things as perfectly as possible. Otherwise, I wasn't going to receive love. And that isn't that my parents necessarily, were responsible for that by any means. Because please keep in mind that this is what kids are learning, right? Their brain is picking up on all of the data and then they are choosing something. So you don't always have full control over what they decide. they may be interpreting things in a certain way that could be entirely interpreted differently by somebody else, which we see because not every kid and every sibling comes out of their childhood with the same learnings, right? They tend to be different. So, as a parent, but also as people who are examining what's going on in our lives, the blame is not on your parents necessarily. Now, there may be certain situations where that's a little bit different, but for most people who grew up with very well-meaning, very loving parents, like that is we are not blaming anybody. And we still want to pay attention to where these things come from because they are learnings that then play out into adulthood. So we're definitely wanting to pay attention to here, like those pieces that we just talked about, but we also want to make sure that you are developing the ability to kind of like an internal control center, and that you are able to set boundaries and find autonomy for your life. Which is where, again, if somebody is very kind and has lost a lot of those boundaries between self and external, which is where, again, I see so much like intestinal permeability and leaky gut when it comes to the functional medicine side of things, but also when it comes to like autoimmune disease, it's like this entire boundary between self and external has been completely lost. So developing that autonomy again can be very, very powerful for someone who has lived so much of their life not having that, right? And just kind of allowing other people mm, to kind of walk all over them. The other thing here too that I think is very important is assertion. I find this one to be a little bit challenging in the sense that, and I think these are all layers, right? Of like you can start to see, like I would say people tend to walk through each of these pieces, like, and they will come in various different orders. But I would say that like the assertion or like being actually able to express what you want and what you need is a very, very big lesson that needs to be learned, but can also be one of the most challenging, especially if you grew up not asking for what you want and what you need. Um, Sorry about that video thing there. We'll get that all corrected. So I think when this is very, very important, especially to when it comes to relationships and it comes to healing. And I think almost in and of itself, like especially chronic illnesses and burnout can be that can be the lesson in and of itself because you you have to start asking for what you want and what you need in order to really get to the root of where those things are coming from. But in order to do that, for a lot of people, you also have to relearn and rewire and face a lot of different beliefs and a lot of different things that hold you back from, being able to actually know what you want and what you need. I will be very honest, sometimes I have to work through things multiple times and ask myself, what do you want here? And sometimes I even have to just do it in conversation with someone, which is why I think group containers can be so helpful because you're going to hear from other people what they're going through. And you also get like coaching with me as well. So as you're working through something, like you'll literally list out like what I really want is this, or what I don't want is this. And all of those things are data that then give you information as far as what it is that you actually want. And that is sometimes what you like, that's the first step, right? Is knowing what you want. And then after that, it's then actually taking action on that. And what I find is that when you actually know what you want and you've healed where those places are coming from, that you aren't asking for what you want and what you need, where you were afraid there might be conflict or where it felt like there was a lot of dis-ease, now you'll feel a lot more ease around expressing your needs and your desires. It's just a really, really cool thing that happens when the brain heals and when you start making new connections and you release a lot of the like negative emotions and the negative baggage, like those chains that you just let them go and like leave them in the past. it changes how you show up in your day-to-day life. And it can show up so fast, like literally less than 24 hours. It's so common that like I will notice and that clients will message me and be like, you won't believe it. But this is what happened. Um, Sometimes that's like having a conversation with a spouse or partner or friend or family member, and it wasn't even instigated by them. It was instigated, it was like brought up by the other person, and the conversation goes so easily that they wonder why there was so much tension and stress before. Because you're no longer bringing that emotional charge into that conversation, into that moment. So it just sort of resolves itself with ease. So powerful and so important. And then I would say too that the other thing here too is as well is kind of like an affirmation that you not only value yourself, but you also value your own experiences as well. And you can see how everything that you experienced, everything that you felt, everything that you went through was valid. Um, that understanding, that knowing, that acceptance is a much deeper level, but so important because so many of us spend a lot of our life devaluing ourselves, devaluing what we bring to the table, even having other people in your life devaluing, not validating your, there's a word for that, and I'm not sure what it is. But anyway, when you may even have people who are saying that your experience isn't valid. Um, so part of it, what I say usually to that is that it first starts with you addressing what's going on internally with where you're not doing that for yourself. And what I have come to find is that when people start actually learning and believing, and they now have these new neuron connections, neurons that fire together, wire together, when you have these new neuron connections that you are worthy and that you are enough and that you are valuable and that your experiences are valid, when you have those and those actually, when you start embodying them and they start becoming who you are now, you become less tolerant of people doing those things around you, which then means you're going to start asserting yourself a bit more, right? You're going to start sticking up for yourself, standing up for yourself. You might start making changes. You might start setting boundaries. It's like a natural progression that tends to happen. And that is kind of like the walk of where that journey goes. And so this is what I mean when I say that like we're not following specific protocols, we're not following specific things that you do. We are addressing these much deeper rooted layers of where these problems come from, where they begin, and that where that journey is taking you. Can we do all of that in just 8 sessions? No, but we can do a heck of a lot. In one of the sessions, we clear the big six of anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and shame. So all of those stored negative emotions that just feel like baggage, I show you how we just release them. And for so many people, just that alone shifts so much for their health that it's so impactful. Even if you don't experience it right away, the impact of that 3, 6, 12 months down the line is massive. And then chipping away at some of the other things as well, as far as like the beliefs and the acceptance and awareness and your values, being able to actually express your needs and your desires. All of these pieces are like what show up inside of my programs and what I work with people on like longer journeys is through each of these pieces, and these themes tend to come up, more and more. And the last thing that I think is really, really important is that what can sometimes get lost and people tend to shy away from are like group containers. But I actually think that groups are very important because this is where you can start forming really genuine connections with other people who are prioritizing themselves, prioritizing their health and their healing. They are prioritizing this journey that they are on, and they want to um, be better versions of themselves. They want to take responsibility for their life and move forward. Doing that with other people and in connection, in community with other people is very healing. And it is a part that I think gets left out a lot, and it is harder to find now, especially in the day of the internet. It's like people are very isolated. So when you come together in connection, I think that's one of those things where it is an undervalued and an underrated part of being able to heal in a group and being able to plug in and being able to see other people transforming, witnessing them working through their stuff, and also being able to then witness yourself going through similar things. It's a different experience than you sometimes get in like private containers. Although again, the connection of not doing it by yourself is like huge. And I speak I it's a thing that I definitely talk to a lot because I have my own coaches and my own people that I work with. So um, I really think that that piece can sometimes get neglected, and I do feel like it is a very important part of healing, is being able to be in community and connection with others. And also on top of that, you also get the benefit of being able to actually get the like it's like a shared when a bunch of people come to, okay, you'll know this from like the perspective of like if you go into like a think tank, or if your work has, or at school even when you were brought in and like everybody was there to like brainstorm to create something. Sometimes there's a little tension, sometimes that can be a little bit tricky, but what happens is when everyone comes together for a similar purpose, and it allows for all of these different ideas to be brought to the table, you are co-creating something. And that is a lot more than just generating ideas, because it is every single person that's there that is bringing something to that table. So when you are in a healing container with other people, the co-creation, the energy that gets combined into all of that is felt by everyone. And it is something where you might get even more than you would have when just by yourself or even in a private coaching container, because you are witnessing and experiencing the energy that everyone is co-creating together and bringing together. That is something that you cannot, number one, put a price on, but number two, it is a feeling and it is an experience that is intangible, but it is so powerful. And and you might even, you can do this in still a remote environment, but you can also feel it so much if you've ever gone in person somewhere and there's been like a group of people and you've just noticed that it was just this really powerful experience because you were all in person and all of these things. That is again the connection that can happen from being in and with a group of people. So I I think there's reasons for all of it. There's reasons for doing things privately. There's reasons for doing things in a group, but I just wanted to tie that in because I think connection and community is something that we are missing. I know with a lot of high achievers, we tend to try and do things ourselves, think that we should be able to figure it out on our own, and you were literally never meant to be able to figure it out on your own. Like you can and you do. I know you do because I do. But we were never meant to do all of this on our own. So, yeah, I think if you've been stuck, if you felt like you are trying to find the answers to things and you're struggling you're feeling like you're in the gap somewhere, I think that it can be very, very helpful to take it from the perspective of looking at all of those different layers and all of those different pieces and seeing where are stress, emotions, and where are some of these deeper layers of the journey and healing that maybe haven't been addressed yet that might be your next step. So I love to say it's just about taking the next right step or the next best step. So where is that next step for you? Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. If you had like any sort of kind of like aha moment or breakthrough or just something really resonated with you, please like leave a comment or come find me on Instagram at Dr. Kirstin. That's DrKirstin. I would love to hear from you. And I would just love to hear what really stood out to you. Yeah, what was that aha moment? So if you are also interested in the deep dive group experience, and even if you're capturing or catching this late and you're interested, just send me a message and I will let you know when the next one is available because I it's such a cool way to get to go through these journeys and especially being able to do it in a group is just it's just awesome. And of course it's available with through privately as well, but yeah, both are an option. Okay, thank you so much for listening and I will see you next time. Take care. Did you know that close to 90% of illnesses are stress related? Burnout doesn't just make you tired, it quietly breaks down your immune system, your hormones, and even your emotional resilience. And not only are high achieving women wired to burn out, but it's also affecting every area of your life, including taking your health down with it. You're likely doing everything, and maybe even feel that you've been doing everything right. Eating healthy, taking all the supplements, doing the workouts, resting, delegating, removing things from your schedule, even the mindset work. But if you're still feeling anxious for no reason, exhausted even after a full night's sleep, feeling numb but wired, or like something has to change, but you just don't quite know what, your body is telling you that this is not a surface level problem. That's why I created the Calm Code. It's a free 5-minute guided meditation to help you interrupt those mental spirals, soothe the stress behind your symptoms, and reset the deeper patterns that are keeping you in burnout, even when you're doing everything right. And you'll also get a bonus meditation to shift the root behaviors and beliefs and patterns that are driving your burnout. So the change doesn't just feel good, it actually sticks. There's no journaling, no prep. Just sit back, listen, and let your body exhale. Because true recovery doesn't come from doing more, it comes from taking out the patterns that are keeping you stuck. And this is where it starts. Go to the link in the show notes and get the Calm Code for free.